Good afternoon. Welcome to Ask the Experts, the show all about your health, your life, your home, and so much more with our rotating cast of experts. Don't forget, you can catch up with past episodes anytime on the free Odyssey app. Just search for Ask the Experts. Those past episodes are there anytime, anywhere. Back with us today, bankruptcy attorney Amy Wilburn with the Lincoln-Goldfinch law firm. Amy, welcome back to Ask the Experts.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Today, we're going to talk about navigating fraud and identity theft. In 2021, the Federal Trade Commission reported over 2 million cases of fraud, which cost consumers over $5 billion. Not some chump change we're talking about there. With technology creating new ways for identity theft and other fraudulent activity to take place, how can we protect ourselves and our finances? Whether you're worried about fraud as a small business owner, a parent, an investor, or as someone who receives government benefits, there is a path forward. Today, we're going to share how to protect yourself from fraud, what you can do if you experience identity theft, and how bankruptcy can help you if you've incurred debt from fraudulent activity. If you've got a question during our live show, pop it into the chat on whatever platform you're on. You can also call or text Amy and the team at Lincoln-Goldfinch, 737-377-2600. That's your phone number. Again, you can call or text 737-377-2600. Pop those questions in, and we'll be happy to take those on for you. Amy, let's get right down to it. What can I do to protect myself from fraudulent activity on my credit or debit cards?
The very, very best thing you can do to protect yourself is to be aware of what is happening in your accounts. That way, as soon as you see something suspicious, you can take action to dispute the charge and protect your accounts. But you should also protect your personal information. Don't give out your social security number except over a secure connection and never over the phone. Change your passwords frequently. Don't use one password for all of your accounts. My own teenage son today texted me this morning and said, Mom, what's my social security number? I think I should have it. And of course, my response was, I'm not texting that information to you. Are you crazy? So be careful how, not just who you give your information to, but how you give your information.
Amy, how can the major credit bureaus help protect my credits and my identity?
Like I said, it's important to know what's going on with your credit, not just your accounts. So you can check your 3 credit reports for free once a year. I like to refer people to annualcreditreport.com. So it's a good idea to spread that out every 4 months. So I personally check mine in June, October, and February. And if you see anything that's not yours, you dispute it immediately. There are instructions on how to dispute items on your credit report on that website. You can also sign up for a service like Mint or Credit Karma that will alert you if a new account is reported on your credit reports. If you're getting a lot of these alerts, then you might want to consider a credit freeze.
And a lot too, Amy, we'll get to what a credit freeze is there in just a second. But I know a lot of credit cards too offer services where they will watch your credit report for you and alert you if new accounts are opened or other red flags pop up on your credit reports.
And sometimes your own bank will do it too. If they see something on your debit card that is an unusually high amount or in a part of the country that you aren't usually found in, they will call you. And if you don't answer or if you don't immediately call them back, they will freeze your debit card. I know this because this happened to me. And so I found out the hard way, but they're watching out for you. It's a very good service.
Absolutely. Amy, you mentioned a credit freeze earlier from in terms of your credit report. What is that? What is a credit freeze?
A credit freeze is where you tell the 3 credit reporting bureaus that you are the victim of identity theft and that you don't authorize any new credit using your information. It's a proactive step that you can take rather than being reactive and trying to play whack-a-mole with new accounts fraudulently opened. It's a double-edged sword because you can't then take out new credit unless you've lifted that credit freeze. You might also consider a fraud alert, which is similar to what you and I were just talking about. A fraud alert on the credit reporting bureaus lasts 1 year, and you can renew it after a year.
Amy, on that credit freeze, does that have any impact? Obviously, it freezes new credit from being opened. Does it have any impact on my day to day or month to month normal bill paying? Can I still pay rent? Can I still pay my normal bills?
Yeah, you absolutely can, because paying ongoing rent or paying your utilities does not involve incurring new debt. It's not a new account. You just continue to pay it with your credit card or transferring from funds from your account or however you normally pay your debt.
Can I still apply for an apartment or renew my lease with a credit freeze? I know many landlords dig in, pull your credit, that kind of thing. Is any impacts there when you have a credit freeze on your bureau reports?
Yeah, you can for sure renew your lease because most landlords don't run a new credit report when you renew a lease. You can also rent an apartment. They pull a credit report, but it's a soft inquiry, not a hard inquiry. So they're not looking always for your credit score. They're looking for red flags like evictions and things like that. So you should be able, even with a credit freeze, you should be able to rent a new rental property. However, if a landlord runs into difficulty while running your credit for a new rental, you can just temporarily lift that credit freeze before you submit the application. Or if they call you and say, hey, we tried to run it, there was some kind of problem, you just say, let me make a phone call. You lift the credit freeze for a day, put it back on, problem solved.
Amy, here's a question from the inbox from one of our listeners. My kid took my credit card without my permission, and the 30-day grace period to get a refund from my bank has passed. Do I have any recourse?
My goodness. So, yes, I'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, you and your kid need to have an ongoing conversation, not just about taking things without permission, but what it means when we use credit cards. So, this is a great opportunity for learning. Dear darling child of mine, when you use my credit card, this is what happens with my money, my credit, etc. And now,
Not not
because you
just not just the value of money, but the value of credit. Exactly.
exactly, and the interest that gets added on to that. So because you did this, my dear darling child, we have to go without going to movies this month, or you can't have your allowance this month in order for me to pay this debt plus interest. I would still push your bank to refund the money. If it's not an ongoing problem, you're not abusing the system, banks really do have a lot of leeway in order to make things right for you because you are the customer after all. However, if they are very opposed to it, you might be on the hook for paying that debt. The lesson here, though, is to not let 30 days go by before checking your statements. If the reason they say there's a 30-day limit on doing that is they want you to be checking on things. We don't want you coming back a year after the fact and saying, I never look at my statements, but I noticed that there's this charge that I didn't authorize. So make sure you're checking.
And of course, a more modern approach to this too is not just taking the credit card and making some purchases, but also the cell phone, the app store, buying things in games. I know a couple of people that have their kid, they'll give their phone to their kid, the kid's playing a game, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 all of a sudden
I
racked up 100, 200, $300 in the app store.
$300. I have spent a long time on the phone with Microsoft Xbox people in years past before we figured out how to put a lockdown on that sort of thing. Absolutely. Very easy to let that happen.
Amy, let's get into some bankruptcy related topics. Is debt incurred from identity theft covered by bankruptcy? Is that something that can be discharged through a bankruptcy?
Yeah, it sure can. If you're the victim of identity theft, bankruptcy can usually discharge that debt if it's a dischargeable debt. There's a section on a bankruptcy petition where we list all the debts and we indicate if that debt is disputed, not really mine, identity theft. And so I like to cast a really wide net when I'm preparing a bankruptcy petition, and I will include any and all debt that is yours or that is not really yours, but someone else used your information for, or a debt that you're not even sure if it's been paid or not. So there's no harm in adding on as much debt as could possibly reach your doorstep. And so it's good that will come from casting that wide net. And just so there's no confusion, if you have incurred the debt through fraud, such as forging a signature or inflating your income, it is possible that that debt won't be discharged through a bankruptcy. But if you're the victim of identity theft, that debt can almost always be discharged through a bankruptcy.
Difference between being the victim of fraud and the perpetrator of fraud. Are there any ways I can restore my credit after identity theft?
As I said up before, your very first step is to dispute that debt on your credit reports. If it's not yours, you dispute it and you keep disputing it. So the goal of that is to have the debt removed. And if you do nothing else than dispute it and it does get removed, that alone will improve your credit. All the other ways to improve credit will go a long way to improving things like making your other payments on time, paying down your credit cards, and using your credit sparingly.
Amy, what should I do if someone tries to file for taxes and claim my tax refund through identity theft?
So the IRS, because it's the IRS, has a form for this circumstance. It's Form 14039, and it's called an identity theft affidavit. You can also use this form not just for tax purposes, but for other kinds of identity theft. The form's going to ask you about the circumstances of the identity theft. It's going to ask how you found out, if you know who did it, and what tax years were affected by this identity theft. So, one word of caution is it's important to know that you're signing this form under penalty of perjury. So be very, very careful what you put on there. Make sure that you are entirely truthful on this form. And then for future tax filings, the IRS may require you to use a special personal identification number on your 1040 tax returns.
Amy, what should I do if someone tries to file for my government benefits through identity theft? Do I have any recourse there?
Yeah, you really don't want to sleep on this one. Your number one first job to do is to call that governmental agency that's handling the benefits. They might ask you some identifying questions to make sure that you're the real person. And they may also suggest that you file a police report to document the identity theft. If they do recommend that you do this, please follow through. It's really, really important. You want to have a paper trail for being a victim of identity theft. And you definitely don't want to let that particular job pass you by. So you never know when you might need those government benefits. You might think today that you don't need food stamps, but 2 years from now, who knows? So you don't want to just say no harm, no foul. You need to make sure that your rights are protected, so that those benefits are available to you down the road. Adulting's just a lot of work. I'm sorry.
Truer words have never been spoken.
It really is.
Let's flip over to the commercial side a little bit. As a small business owner, and we have many of those in our audience, how can I protect my business from identity theft or other fraudulent activity? Any tips for the entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, a lot of the same rules apply to businesses as to individuals. Check your accounts regularly, check your activity regularly. Don't give out your social security number, your tax ID number, your employee identification number without being very careful to whom you're sharing that. Keep tabs on employees who have access to company credit cards. You don't want to just hand out that number willy nilly. And also keep tabs on who has access to the office, who has access to those computers or checks or cash boxes, whether they have keys or keypads. I can't tell you how often I've seen businesses not get keys back from former employees or volunteers, or they haven't changed their passwords regularly. You really want to keep a close eye on that. Personally, I'm heavily involved with my church, and not my current church, but my previous church. There was this whole debacle of how many of these volunteers have keys. People who are long deceased, who knows where they went. You really need to keep tabs on how many keys you're handing out to folks.
When the entire congregation has a key, there's no physical security.
Pretty much.
Amy, here's a question from the inbox while we're on the topic of businesses. An ex-employee engaged in fraudulent activity through my business. What can I do? Can bankruptcy help my business recover from fraudulent activity?
A bankruptcy can help with this, but you might be able to recover without even having to go to the extent of filing a bankruptcy. Again, you want to make a police report and then call your liability insurance. I hope that every business out there has insurance. It is possible that you can be made whole through your insurance company. You might also decide to seek a remedy in the courts by going after your former employee in a civil action.
Amy, I invested in a cryptocurrency. Another question here from the inbox. Invested in a cryptocurrency that turned out to be a scam. Does this count as investment fraud? And if so, is there a way that bankruptcy could help me with investment fraud?
So the only time that bankruptcy would help in this situation is if you incurred debt from that fraud. And then there are two pieces of it. You have the debt that you incurred by this scam, and also you might be able to recover. And so that potential recovery from that scam, it becomes an asset, a future asset that you'll have to report. So if you got debt from an investment scam of some sort, you used your credit card for cash advances or something, yes, you can definitely put that on your bankruptcy petition. If you were just paying cash, basically, crypto is a thing right now. I know there are some crypto currency scams out there. And a lot of times there's really just not much that can be done, but you do want to report it because if it happened to you, it probably happened to other people. And we'd want to make sure that the authorities know that how to proceed with that.
Amy, a couple more questions here from the inbox. Shifting back to personal finance and relationships, too. My ex spouse was caught engaging in fraudulent activity. Can this affect my bankruptcy filing in Texas since it is a community property state?
I am so glad you asked this question. This is actually the facts in a Supreme Court case this term. This is a case where one spouse was not aware of fraudulently obtained debt and is asking the high court to determine whether she too will be denied the discharge of that debt. So we don't know the answer yet. By June 30th, I should be able to tell you. But right now, that's a big question that the Supreme Court is going to be looking at.
Stay tuned. The ruling will come soon. And
Yes.
one more question here from the inbox. My spouse was the victim of identity theft. Will this affect both of our finances? And what should we keep track of?
Last question first. Keep track of everything. Community property, like Texas is a community property state, that applies to assets that are acquired after marriage and debt incurred after marriage. So if your spouse was a victim of identity theft prior to your marriage, then it likely won't affect you other than the big hassle. But if you haven't been watching your credit reports or reviewing your statements or all the other things that we've talked about, then the identity theft might still be happening, and that certainly could affect you. So, again, keep track of everything. Make sure you know that you're changing your passwords. They're good and not easily guessed passwords. You're checking your statements, you're checking your credit reports. All of that will help protect you.
There you have it, navigating fraud and identity theft and how some of that can tie into bankruptcy. If you've got a financial situation that maybe it's getting a little out of control for you, maybe the anxiety of those phone calls or the letters coming into your mailbox is getting to be too much, call Amy and the team at Lincoln-Goldfinch, 737-377-2600. They'll give you a free consultation on your particular situation, find the right path forward. Maybe it's bankruptcy, maybe it's something else. They'll help figure out what's right for your particular needs and your particular situation. Again, that phone number, 737-377-2600. And a lot of good resources up on the web as well. That website, lincolngoldfinch.com, lincolngoldfinch.com. Amy, that's our time today. Thanks so much for joining us on Ask the Expert. And the co-hosts come in to end the show.
Great. I do want to add that another good website for people to check out is consumer.ftc, federaltradecommission.gov. that has a lot of information about identity theft, scams, how to protect yourself. So that's another good resources that people can visit.
There you go. Yeah, good resources from the FTC. And earlier we talked about your credit reports. That's annualcreditreport.com, right?
Correct. Thank you.
There you go. Amy Wilburn with the Lincoln-Goldfinch Law Firm. Amy, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you next time.
And we'll have more for you right here on Ask the Experts.